Alright, one of my viewers asked me, is it difficult for foreigners to get a driver's license here in Japan? Okay, that depends on what country you're coming from. There's two categories. In the first category, there's countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, Germany, and I'll leave a list of those countries in the description area of this video. If you're from one of those countries, all you have to do is go to the Department of Motor Vehicles in your prefecture here in Japan, and you simply just change your license from your country's license to a Japanese license. That's it, you're done, you're finished. Okay, if you're not from one of those countries, then it is very difficult to get a driver's license. And unfortunately, America is not in that first category. Somehow Japan calculated that we have a very bad driving record, and also our license issuing system is by state and it doesn't have a national standard. But recently it has been determined that actually per driving mile, Americans have a safer driving record than Japanese people. So in the next few years, America is going to become one of those countries where you simply can just change your license into a Japanese license. But for now, if you're not in that first category of countries that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, if you're not from one of those countries, you have to take a written test and a driving test. And it is very difficult. The written test is not so difficult, but the driving test is very difficult. I read that in Tokyo there's only about a 35% pass rate for people who are taking the test for the first time, and usually people have to take the test 4 or 5 or 6 times before they can pass it. About 7 years ago, I tried to take the test and I passed the written test, but I failed the driving test. It's very strict. You know, if you don't put on your blinker at the exact right time, if you don't look back when you're changing lanes, you know, they just penalize you for the smallest thing. So you really have to do it perfectly to pass. And also, when foreigners take the test, well, at least in my case, they didn't let us take the test with other Japanese people. They grouped the foreigners together, and when we took the driving test, we all sat in the car while the other person was taking the test. There was like 5 of us, so we got to watch the other foreigners taking the test. Okay, now I have a license to drive a motorcycle here in Japan, and actually I went to a driving school here in Japan to get my motorcycle license. Here in Japan, Japanese people can get their license from when they're 18 years old, and they have to go to a private school, and they have to pay about $3,000 US to get their driver's license. So it's very difficult for Japanese people to get their licenses too. And lastly, I just want to say that it's very difficult to drive here in Japan. The roads are very narrow, and there's not a lot of like wide open space like there is in the United States. And driving is very expensive in Japan. Every time you use a freeway, you have to pay for it. It costs about $1 per mile. If you live in the city, you have to pay for parking, which costs $200, $300, or $400 a month. Gas is about $8 a gallon. So if you want to drive here in Japan, you've got to have deep pockets.